Welcome, dreamers, to the realm where time no longer moves forward, but folds softly into itself, where the boundaries between memory and myth become but a shimmer on the surface of the sea. Tonight we drift into the murmuring depths of the Mediterranean, toward an island once kissed by the sun, brushed by the winds, and veiled now in shadows of forgotten glory. There the Minoans, an ancient people of eleganza, mystery, and enigma once, danced in the courtyards of open palaces, painted the walls with dolphins, lilies, and spirals of eternity, and vanished, as if swept away by the sigh of the earth itself. Before we embark on this journey through time's mysteries, if these ancient whispers resonate with your soul, let your presence be known through a gentle light, and join our circle of dreamers by subscribing, so that we may continue these nightly journeys into history's hidden realms. Share with us, fellow dreamers, from which corner of the world you're joining tonight's contemplation. Let the global community of history's mysteries connect across time zones as we drift together into the past. Now, close your eyes, and let the incense of memory and myth draw you inward. For the sea is calm, and the island of the vanished Minoans awaits. There is an island where the earth still breathes ancient sighs. Its name is Crete, and though it hums now with the quiet rhythm of olive groves and the hush of evening tides, beneath its soil lie the pulse beats of a civilization long forgotten by the waking world. You will not hear their names in everyday conversation. You will not see their temples standing proud like those of Athens or Rome. But the Minoans, as we call them now, once filled this island with dreams sculpted into stone, with frescoes that moved like music across plastered walls, with rituals older than the pyramids, and a silence that still echoes through the ruins. Imagine the sea, lapping gently against harbor stones, a harbor filled not with conquest or cannon, but with vases, ivory, perfumes, and dreams. Long before Greece dreamed of gods on Olympus, long before empires carved borders with blood, the Minoans created something different, not a world of war, but one of flow. Their palaces, if one can call them, that had no walls for defense, only open air, flowing corridors, layered balconies, as if even the architecture itself sought only harmony with the wind and sun. Knossos, Phaistos, Zacrus, names like soft murmurs on ancient lips, each site resting now beneath dust and silence. But once, they were alive with color, motion, and meaning. Breathe slowly now. Feel the sun of 4,000 years ago on your skin. Let it warm your shoulders as you walk into a world both familiar and impossibly far. A woman kneels, pressing pigment to plaster before it dries. She paints a blue monkey leaping through reeds. It is not a picture of power. It is a portrait of joy. A boy runs through a courtyard, the tiles beneath his feet echoing faintly. He wears no armor. He has no sword. Only a sash of cloth, a bronze pendant around his neck, and a future unburdened by war. What kind of people built a civilization without fortresses? What kind of world existed where the bull was not slaughtered but danced with? They were not called Minoans then. Drawn from the legend of King Minos, that name was given much later, a shadow of a myth draped over something real. But, whatever they called themselves, they lived in rhythms shaped by sea currents and the moon, and then they vanished. Not all at once, not with a scream, but with the hush of a curtain falling after a play, with the whisper of waves over sand. Tonight, we do not seek answers in conquest or ruin, we seek echoes. We listen for the footsteps that still walk the buried corridors. We trace the paint that still clings, stubbornly, to crumbling walls. And so, as night deepens around you, we will walk deeper into the dream of the vanishment, those who built their world with grace, not greed, and left behind a silence that still breathes. The island of Crete was not alone. To the north and slightly west, nestled in the sapphire cradle of the Aegean, another island shimmered in the sunlight there. You may know it by a different name now, Santorini. But long before tourists strolled its caldera rim with cameras and chilled wine, Thera was part of the Minoan world, an extension of their elegance, their artistry, and their dreamlike devotion to the natural rhythms of earth and sea. Breathe in the scent of salt carried on the wind. Feel the distant hum beneath your feet, a humming not of machines or men, but of something deeper, the breath of a volcano sleeping beneath the waves. Thera was not merely an island, it was a canvas, homes painted in vivid hues, streets paved in stone art that spoke not of conquest, but of reverence, swallows in flight, lilies in bloom, girls with wild curls leaping in ceremony, a world alive with motion and color, frozen now in time, like a breath held too long. Akrotiri, the city that once crowned the southern edge of Thera, lies buried still, not in myth, but in ash. Ash that preserved the world like amber. Walk with me through its silent streets, past two-story homes with painted walls, past pottery resting still on wooden shelves, past looms where the last threads of life were once woven. But listen, can you hear it? The silence that comes before the fire, the pause in nature's breath before the earth tears open its heart. For the volcano beneath Thera did awaken, and when it did, it was not with fury, but with transformation. Scholars say it may have been the most powerful eruption in human memory. A plume that kissed the stratosphere, waves that crossed seas, clouds that darkened the sky for years. But this is not a story of destruction. This is a story of disappearance. The Minoans were not crushed in an instant. They faded slowly, mysteriously, like mist retreating from morning sun. The eruption of Thera may have been the beginning of their unraveling, but not its end. Some say the tidal waves ravaged Crete's northern shores. Some say the ash choked their crops. Others whisper that their gods were silenced, and with them, the harmony they had once known. But here, in the mystery, is the wonder. The Minoans did not rebuild with walls. They did not raise swords or statues of vengeance. They did not inscribe their fears into stone. They simply faded. Is it possible, dreamer, that they chose silence over struggle, that they slipped into legend as softly as a dolphin slipping beneath the waves? The Greeks would later tell of Atlantis, a world of harmony lost to hubris, swallowed by the sea. Was it just a tale, or was it perhaps a memory of a people who vanished not with thunder, but with grace? Tonight, as your breath slows, as your thoughts drift like petals on the current of sleep, know this: the earth remembers, and beneath layers of ash and silence, Thera still hums with echoes of a vanished world. A world of artists and sailors, of dancers and dreamers, of people who build beauty and vanished into its shadow. Let us return now to Crete. The sea is quiet tonight, and the stars, those same stars that once watched over the ancient courtyards, glimmer gently above us, as if still remembering. In the heart of the island lies not a palace as we often imagine, but a labyrinth of corridors, chambers, stairways, and light wells, woven together like the petals of a flower opening toward the sky. And though the name palace may linger, there is no throne room carved in dominion, no fortress tower casting shadows of control. Instead, there are flowing spaces, chambers flooded with sunlight and cooled by sea breezes, walls painted in colors of sea foam and fire, columns painted red to echo the setting sun. These were not the monuments of warlords, but the breathing heart of a civilization that danced with the rhythms of the world. The Minoans built for openness, for air to move, for voices to carry, for life to swirl through their sanctuaries like wind through reeds. There were rooms filled with amphitol jars holding oil, grain, wine. There were lustral basins where water reflected flickering lamplight. There were shrines, not of domination, but of reverence for goddesses with open arms and serpents coiled gently around them. No towering Zeus, no spears of Mars, just the Earth Mother and the women who danced in her name. Yes, the women, for in Minoan art and ceremony, they appear not as background, but as central figures, dancers, initiates, guardians of the sacred rites. Imagine now a procession moving slowly through a sunlit corridor, white robes brushing the polished stone, anklets chiming softly with every step, hands holding lilies, doves, or cups of saffron. They do not shout, they do not conquer, they remember. They remember the seasons, the moon, the turning of tides and stars. And we, dreamers, as we lie still in this quiet hour, can almost hear their footsteps in the dust, can almost feel the brush of their garments on the wind. In the center of Gnosis, beneath painted dolphins and spirals of red and gold, was the whole of the double axe, the labyrinth, a sacred symbol not of battle, but of balance. It was here, perhaps, that rituals unfolded in voices we can no longer understand. It was here that mystery lived in form and silence. And perhaps this is where the myth was born. The labyrinth, not a prison of stone for a beast, but a temple of spirit for seekers. Not a place to escape, but a place to return to. You see, the Greeks would later tell of Minos, the Minotaur, and a twisting maze of fear and sacrifice. But what if the labyrinth was never meant for escape? What if it was meant for stillness, for walking inward, for remembering? Tonight, let the corridors of Gnosis unfurl within you. Let each turn bring not confusion, but calm. Let each chamber breathe with echoes of ancient reverence. For the Minoans built not to command, but to commune. Not to dominate, but to dwell. And when they walked their palaces, they walked not alone, but with the sky above them, and the earth below, and something sacred flowing quietly between. In the stillness of ancient halls, where painted walls crumbled gently under the soft breath of time, there remains a puzzle untouched by certainty. A whisper of thought carved into clay, a forgotten tongue known now only by its absence. It is called Linear A, a script pressed into tablets and pottery shards, hidden in storerooms and sealed beneath fallen stones. It flows in gentle rose-curved, flowing, elegant, but its meaning eludes us still, not because it is lost, but because it resists the grasp of modern minds. Linear A, the breath of a people who did not leave chronicles of war, who did not etch their pride into stylus or carve triumphs into marble. Instead, they left lists of offerings, of inventories, of sacred gifts perhaps, and symbols that hum with meanings we cannot fully reach. Scholars bend over fragments lit by lamplight, mapping out repeating shapes, hunting for patterns, comparing these signs to later scripts. Linear B, the language of Mycenaean Greece. But the meanings remain hidden, like the murmurs of dreams fading upon waking. You, dreamer, drifting on the edge of sleep, imagine those symbols now, not as cold, lifeless marks, but as vessels of thought, the way wind fills the sails of a ship, the way many once filled those signs with soft intention. Each character, a lupin bending, was pressed by human hands. Hands, perhaps scented with olive oil, dusted with grain, calloused from work, yet gentle in this ritual of writing. What stories did they tell, those who wrote in linear? What hopes were whispered into clay? What songs, now silent, once rested beneath their fingertips? Perhaps the Minoans never meant to be understood by us, but for rhythm. Perhaps their language was not just for record, for ceremony, for speaking not to others, but to the earth itself. When we find their tablets, we find more than text. We find offerings sealed in jars, grains, honey-perfumed oil, gifts to their gods, left in chambers underground, where firelight flickered on the painted horns of bulls. This, too, was a kind of language, not spoken, not written. The turning of the seasons, the mixing of saffron with wine, the dance of women on painted steps. Their world was built on repetition, on patterns, both seen and felt. The swirl of the spiral, the leap of the bull, the silent turning of the double axe. And just as the stars returned each night, so too did the rites of the Minoans, carried in footsteps, marked in symbols, and spoken in silence. So tonight, as the hush of sleep draws closer, let go of meaning as we know it. Let the symbols flow without translation. Let them become wind wave and whisper. For the Minoans did not speak to history in the way others did. They spoke to mystery, and perhaps it is in this quiet, this space between knowledge and wonder, that they can still be heard. In the wide courtyards beneath the open Cretan sky, a ritual unfolded, graceful, sacred, and strange. It was not a battle. It was not a game. It was the bull leaping. Imagine now the golden glow of morning brushing across sun-warmed stones, the hum of quiet anticipation from the gathered watchers, the gentle stamp of a great bull's hooves on the ground, and then a figure runs forward, swift as wind over grass, grabs the horn, and in one fluid arc, flips high over the creature's massive back, landing behind it with the quiet poise of a dancer. This was not a contest of power. It was a ballet of trust, timing, and respect. The bull, sacred to the Minoans, was not an enemy. It was a partner, a vessel of divine strength, a creature woven into myth and ritual. From cave paintings in the high hills to ivory carvings and wall frescoes, the bull appears again and again. Not slaughtered, not broken, but honored. In the Palace of Gnosis, a fresco shimmers with blue and rust-red hues. It shows the bull, its body stretched in motion like a wave, as two young men and one woman engage in the ancient dance. It is not clear what it meant. It may never be. Was it a rite of passage, a ceremony of renewal, a performance for the goddess herself? We do not know. But we do know this. To leap over the bull was not merely a feat of strength. It was an act of devotion. To trust the creature's rhythm, to move in harmony with its breath and momentum, was to surrender to something larger. And the Minoans, it seems, were unafraid to move with the forces they revealed. Tonight, dreamer, imagine yourself beneath that same sky, barefoot on sun-warmed stone. The bull before you, eyes calm, muscles coiled, the breeze stirs your hair, time slows, and you run not to conquer, but to leap, to meet the sacred in mid, to fly, just for a moment, between earth and heaven. For the Minoans knew that danger could be danced with, that reverence need not wear armor, and that even the most powerful beings, be they gods or beasts, could be greeted with grace. This was the soul of their world, a world where life was ceremony, and the sacred was not hidden in temples, but lived in movement, color, and breath. So let your breath slow now. Feel the earth beneath you. Feel the air lift you, and know you, too, are leaping through memory, carried by dreams, toward a place where myth and life are not separate. But to understand the Minoans, one must understand the sea, not merely as water, not merely as boundary, but as breath, as origin, as path. Crete was not isolated. It was cradled by waves, by winds, by wandering stars reflected on the ocean's glassy skin. The Minoans did not fear the sea, they became its children. Close your eyes and listen to the lap of tide against ancient stone, to the creak of a wooden vessel swaying in rhythm with the current, to the call of gulls overhead, watching as traders hoist sails made not of conquest, but of commerce, of curiosity, of communion. The Minoan ships were not built for war. They were sleek, fast, low to the waves, designed to move with the will of the ocean. Painted with red ochre and white lines, they glided like sea creatures, alive, alert, aware. And from these vessels, the Minoans reached out to Egypt, to the Levant, to the exchanging not just goods, but gestures of meaning, art, style, and soul. A necklace of lapis lazuli from the east, a carving of Egyptian ivory, a fresco that echoes with Nile-born birds. They absorbed and returned, never imposing, never shouting, only echoing, mirroring, and weaving the world into themselves. They brought home more than objects. They brought home stories, and perhaps that is what made their civilization so gentle. Their identity was not forged in fire, but shaped like clay in the hands of many. The sea taught them patience. The sea taught them flow. The sea became their mirror. In Minoan art there is no horizon. The sky and water blend. Fish swim with women in swirling spirals. Octopuses wrap their tendrils not around prey, but around the shape of the vase itself, as if to embrace, not devour. And in this embrace, we see something rare. A civilization at peace with its environment, not in dominion over it, but dancing within it. Can you feel the salt on your skin now? Can you taste the memory of sea breeze? Let the gentle pull of the tide sway you. As the Minoans once swayed with sails and stars, let your thoughts drift outward, beyond islands and time, until you are floating light as foam, in a sea where the past is never lost, only sleeping beneath the waves. And when you return to the shore, know that the sea carries more than memory. It carries mystery, and in that mystery, the Minoans still breathe. Amid the columns of note, beneath the layered frescoes of dolphins, spirals, and flowing hair, a figure rises again and again. The goddess, she is not veiled in sorrow, nor armored for battle. She stands with her chest lifted, her arms open, serpents coiling calmly in her hands, and a feline perched upon her crown like a living whisper. She does not demand. She invites. She does not punish. She reveals. This goddess, unnamed by history but remembered in clay and stone, was not a distant force upon a mountain. She was present in the hearth, the harvest, the hush between breaths. The Minoans, it seems, worshipped not in fear, but in closeness. Their temples were not fortresses, but natural spaces, sacred caves deep in the earth, mountaintop shrines kissed by clouds, open courts where wind and fire could mingle without walls. They made offerings of grain and honey, of crafted figurines and folded hands, not to appease wrath, but to share gratitude. In her image, we find the heart of the Minoan spirit, a civilization that did not divide the sacred from the everyday, but poured the divine into every movement, every color, every act of care. The goddess stood not above them, but among them. Look now upon her form. Her waist is tightly bound. Her skirt flared like a blooming lily. Her hair flows freely. Her gaze serene but unflinching. In one hand a serpent, a creature of earth, of cycles, of renewal. In the other, another serpent, its twin, its balance. And above her, the cat, wild, elegant, untamed. This is no goddess of judgment. This is the goddess of life itself, of weaving and waking, of bleeding and birthing, of the earth that gives and takes without cruelty. Imagine a festival in her honor, torches casting long shadows across the courtyard walls, girls in flowing skirts dancing in a circle, bare feet tapping rhythms known only to their ancestors, men with lyres plucking tones like the call of starlight, a cup of wine passed from hand to hand, a whisper of prayer rising like smoke, not words of fear, but of union, not cries for protection, but songs of remembrance. Tonight, as your body softens into sleep, feel her arms around you, not holding, but opening. Let the serpents coil gently around your dreams, not to strike, but to guide you deeper into the spiral, where past and present flow together. The Minoans may have disappeared from history's surface, but their goddess still waits in silence, rooted in stone, wrapped in vine and sky. And in that stillness, she listens. All that we know of the Minoans comes not from their voices, but from their echoes. And where memory falters, myth begins. To the Greeks, the ruins on Crete were ancient even in their age, overgrown, half-buried, silent, and so they built a story, one of kings, beasts, and mazes. King Minos, a ruler too proud to obey the gods, a judge of the dead, seated in the afterlife, a man who demanded tribute from Athens, 7 youths and 7 maidens, to be fed to the Minotaur, a creature half-man, half-bull, hidden deep within the twisting corridors of the labyrinth. And there, they said, Theseus, the hero, descended, a thread in his hand, a sword in his grip, to slay the beast and emerge reborn. But myths are not lies. They are mirrors. What, then, did the Greeks see when they looked upon the ruins of Perhaps they saw the bull frescoes, faded but vivid still, the open architecture maze-like in its elegancy, the symbols they could not read, the goddess with serpents in her hands. And in this silence, they filled the space with meaning, a meaning shaped by their own fears, of power lost, of civilizations crumbling, of a golden world slipping beneath the sea. Atlantis, too, whispered its name here. Plato, writing centuries later, spoke of an island rich, noble, radiant, that defied the divine and was swallowed by the waves. He described a society with flowing canals, palaces gleaming with metal and color, priests who honored the earth and sky, and then silence, a vanishing. Some believe he spoke in allegory. Others, that he echoed stories much older than his own. Was he remembering Crete, Orthera? Was Atlantis simply the seen through the haze of memory and longing? We cannot know, but in this uncertain space between fact and fable, we feel their presence most. The myth of the labyrinth is not a lie. It is a memory twisted into poetry, and perhaps not a monster, but a symbol of something deeper, of humanity's dual nature, of our longing for order amid chaos, of the ancient dance between instinct and intellect. You see, myths emerge where history vanishes, and the Minoans, with their flowing walls and spiral symbols, with their goddess and their silence, left just enough to invite the mythmaker's close. They vanish not only in ashen time, but into story, and in story, they live on. So let your thoughts spiral now, like the labyrinth, inward and downward, not toward a monster, but toward mystery. The kind of mystery that hums just beneath language, the kind that waits not to be solved, but simply to be held. For every vanished civilization becomes a myth in time, but the Minoans, they were mythed before they were gone. High above the sea, where the winds are thin and the stars press closer to the earth, the Minoans built temples, not like the pillared monuments of later ages, not of cold marble or golden idols, but sanctuaries woven into the mountain itself, shrines on peaks, altars in caves, places where the earth opened and the divine came near. These sacred spaces were not designed for crowds. They were not arenas of spectacle. They were still, intimate, humming with the breath of moss, stone, and flame. At Mount Juctus above Knossos, a peak sanctuary once rose into the sky. Ceramic figures were found there, tiny, fragile, arms lifted toward the heavens in silent praise. Windswept, starlit, ancient, the kind of place where silence becomes a presence, where you don't speak, you're listening. And beneath the island, too, in the hidden veins of the earth, lay the sacred caves. Caves like Psychro and Camres, dark, echoing, cool as breath. Here, the Minoans came not to escape the world, but to touch its roots. They brought offerings, figurines, blades, bowls, and left them in the stillness, where only water and time would witness them. Imagine stepping into one of these caves, torch in hand. The walls shimmer with ancient damp. Stalactites drip like clocks made of stone. Shadows flicker with every movement. But there is no fear. Only the goddess, they believed, lived in these places. Not far above, but here beneath, within, around. In the curve of the cave ceiling, they saw the sky inverted. In the drip of water, they heard a voice. And as the light of flame mingled with darkness, they knew something we have forgotten. That the sacred is not found in heights alone, but in depth, in silence, in shadow. These spaces remind us of the dual nature of life, the brightness of open courtyards, and the hush of hidden chambers, the sun that paints frescoes, and the cave where mystery hums. The Minoans moved between both worlds, between light and dark, between celebration and contemplation. They did not divide them, they danced between them. Let your breath slow now, dreamer. Let the cave close gently around your thoughts. Let the flicker of imagined flame dance behind your closed eyes, and feel the weight of time pressing gently, not as burden, but as a blanket. You are not alone here. You walk with countless others who have sought the same stillness, the same presence, the same hidden peace. And as you drift further into the dream, remember, even the deepest cave is only a door. They've walked through many. Time, they say, bleaches all things. Stone crumbles, wood rots, paint peels and vanishes like breath upon glass. But on the walls of ancient Minoan palaces, colors still linger, bold, soft, defiant, not memories, survivors. The Minoans painted their world not in shadows, but in pigments drawn from earth and sea, crushed minerals, ground flowers, ash and sun mixed with water and fire. And with these, they brought their dreams to life. In the palace of Knossos, a dolphin leaps across a wall in a private chamber, its body curved with elegance, its eyes wide and full of motion. It does not swim in a storm. It dances in light. Beside it, fish turn gently, as if the ocean has flowed into the very heart of the palace. In another hall, a procession of young women walks in step, each one crowned with flowers, each one serene. Their skin is painted white, their hair a cascade of curls, their robes flowing in stylized grace. In yet another chamber, boys vault over bulls mid-leap, caught in a moment of eternal flight. The colors ochre red, cobalt blue, soft cream, deep black sing across time. They do not fade. They wait. They wait for eyes to meet them again, for minds to wonder who painted them, and why. Minoan art does not shout, it does not demand, it invites. It is not art of power, but of presence. It depicts life, not death, nature, not dominance, women, not warriors, the human form, not as statue or soldier, but as dancer, worshipper, vessel. And through these images, we glimpse a world that loved the sensory, that found holiness in movement, color, and pattern. Can you see it now? Close your eyes and imagine a wall bathed in morning light, a fresco still wet with pigment, the painter's hand steady, her brush tracing the curve of a lily. She hums as she works, not a hymn of conquest, but a lullaby of stillness. This is how the Minoans left their legacy, not carved in stone, but brushed in color, not in stories of war, but in the soft breath of painted sea creatures, the tilt of a girl's head, the spiral of a shell, and in that quiet beauty, they defy time. They defy the erasure of flame, of wave, of centuries. Even now, the colors speak, and we, centuries later, learn again how to listen. So let the colors paint your dreams tonight. Gentle blues, sun-warmed reds, golds flickering like candlelight. Let them cover the walls of your resting mind until you too become part of the fresco and drift into sleep beneath the brushstrokes of another age. It is easy to speak of beginnings of rising cities, painted walls, sails unfurling against the wind. But every civilization, no matter how luminous, eventually enters the hush. And for the Minoans, that hush came slowly, not with invasion, not with collapse in a single night, but with a gradual dimming, like a candle flickering low long before it goes out. After the eruption of Thera, that great breath of the earth that shook the sea and sky, the Minoans were changed. Ash may not have reached every corner of Crete, but its echo did. Crops withered, trade routes shifted, and something within began to fade. Their open palaces, once filled with ceremony and color, grew quiet. New hands arrived from the north, the Mycenaeans warriors from the Greek mainland, whose language was harsh, whose gods demanded other forms of tribute. They brought their own scriptlinia, be a language of inventory, control, and command. And slowly Minoan grace was overlaid by Mycenaean gravity. The goddess with serpents gave way to gods of war. The flowing dance became a march. The palace became a fortress. But there was no great war, no final battle inscribed on stone, just silence. Just the breath between chapters. And that silence is where the Minoans still live. For while the Mycenaeans rose, and Greece one day grew from their ashes, something of the Minoan soul remained elusive, like music whose notes you recall, but whose melody you can no longer sing. Perhaps that is why they vanished so completely, because they were never meant to be remembered through conquest, but through wonder. No tombs, no scrolls, no epic poems, only fragments, only art, only whisper. They did not demand remembrance, they became it. Tonight, as the world around you grows still, as your thoughts loosen their grip on the day, imagine walking through an abandoned hall at twilight. The columns are worn, the paint faded, but the shape of beauty remains. You pass a doorway, you pause, and just for a breath you hear it, a faint sound, laughter, song, the soft patter of feet on stone. You turn, nothing, only air, only stillness. But in that moment, the past is near. And the Minoans, they sing again, not loudly, but just enough for those who listen. If there is a symbol that whispers most clearly the soul of the Minoans, it is the spiral carved into pottery, etched into stone, painted onto walls with flowing grace. It is everywhere in their world, a curve without end, a motion inward, then outward, a breath drawn deep and slowly released. Unlike the hard lines of empires, the squares of cities, the columns of conquest, the Minoan spiral does not conquer space. It enfolds it. It does not divide, it connects. The spiral is not a wall, it is a path. And the Minoans seem to understand this. Their art, their rituals, their architecture, all echoed this soft geometry, labyrinthine corridors that wound in on themselves, painted scenes that flowed in curves, ceramics that coiled like shells plucked from the shore. Even their myths, filtered through later tongues, carry its shape. The story of the labyrinth, a spiral of fear and heroism, of descent and return. But perhaps that story, before it was twisted into tales of monsters, was something gentler. Perhaps it was a teaching to go inward, to walk the winding path of self and spirit, to meet something ancient at the center and then return changed, softer, wiser. The spiral is the shape of seashells, of galaxies, of unfolding fern leaves. It is the rhythm of breath, the beat of time. And perhaps that is why the Minoans chose it, not as decoration, a symbol of life lived not in a straight line, but in circles of becoming. Even their religious spaces echo this thought. In caves and on mountain shrines, pilgrims would move inward step by step, not toward a throne, but toward an experience. There were no golden idols, no commandments in stone, only the quiet spiral of approach and offering, only presence, only pattern. You, dreamer, are on a spiral of your own tonight, drifting inward, gently, breath by breath, not towards sleep as an end, but as a return to stillness, to memory, to the part of yourself that remembers what it means to listen. Let the spiral carry you. Let it turn without haste, without goal, without pressure. For the Minoans remind us, not all journeys must conquer. Some are simply to feel, and in feeling, we find eternity. In museums, Behind glass polished by countless gazes, they wait. Clay figurines, no taller than your hand. Ivory heads with eyes long since fresco fragments where only part of a face remains. An arching brow, a curve of cheek, a suggestion of a smile that has not been seen for thousands of years. These are the faces of the Minoans, and though we cannot call them by name, though no voice from their time rises to speak for them, they remain not as royalty or warriors, not as myths or monsters, but as people, mothers who stirred pots while humming lullabies, children who chased birds in the open courtyards, fishermen who rose before dawn, pulling nets heavy with the weight of morning light. They lived, not in the pages of epic, but in the breath between tasks, in the flicker of lamps, in the slow weaving of cloth, in the shared glance over figs and honey. And this, too, is history. Not just the grand, but the gentle. Not just the loud, but the lingering. In the ruins of Akrotiri, a silent city, a pot still rests where a hand placed it. A staircase turns a corner no feet have touched in ages, and on a wall a girl picks saffron, her hands full of crimson threads, her gaze distant, as if she already knows she will be remembered only in pigment. Who was she? What did she dream? Did she sing when she worked? Did she watch the sea with wonder? Did she think the world would end, or continue forever? We cannot know. But we can listen. We can let their quiet gestures rise through the ash and dust, through the broken tiles and sun-bleached stone, and reach us not as facts, but as feelings. The Minoans did not write epic histories. They left no carved records of their kings or wars, but they left us life. Life caught in clay, life brushed onto walls, life poured into vessels shaped like birds, fish, and flowers. So tonight, as you drift further into the sea of dreams, let your mind rest among their faces. Let their lives mingle with yours, not as ghosts, but as companions. The woman grinding grain beneath morning sun, the boy drawing spirals in the dirt with a stick, the elder watching the stars from a stone ledge murmuring names now long forgotten. They are not lost. They are simply quiet, and in that quiet, they wait to be remembered. By you, far to the north of Crete, where the Aegean deepens and the winds shift with strange intention, there lies an island that once breathed fire. There, you may know it as Santorini, its crescent-shaped curving like a sleeping dragon around the Caldera Sea. But long before the whitewashed villas and blue-domed chapels, it was a different place. A living city called Akrotiri did not belong to conquerors or kings. It belonged to artists, sailors, and silent watchers of the stars. And one day, it disappeared. Not through conquest, not through decay, but through silence, sealed in fire and ash. Let us go there now. Dreamer, gently, quietly. Let your steps be slow as you walk the streets of a city frozen in time. The air is thick with memory. Here is a home, its walls still standing, frescoes still whispering color across the plaster, a bed, a shelf, a stairway curving upward into a silence that will never lift. There is no gold, no weapons, only beauty. A mural of blue monkeys dancing through reeds, a room lined with painted swallows in flight, vases shaped like marine life, so you can almost hear the laughter of those who shaped them. And then beneath it all, the ash. Meter upon meter of volcanic silence. It buried the city not in chaos but in preservation. As if the earth itself wanted to remember, wanted to hold this place like a memory precious to forget. Akrotiri did not burn. It endured. And so we walk among rooms where life stopped midst, where a cup was left on a ledge, where footprints may still rest deep beneath the layers. No bodies were found, no screams preserved, only stillness, only pause. It is said that the people of Akrotiri fled, that tremors warned them, that the sea withdrew, that the mountain groaned with fire long enough for them to leave. If that is true, they left behind a prayer of sorts, a city at peace, a final gift. And here again the spiral returns, the eruption that buried Akrotiri so vast, so cataclysmic may have echoed across the world, but what remains is quiet. There may be the key to Atlantis, it may be the shadow beneath Plato's tale, a world of beauty lost to the sea. But here, in Akrotiri, there is no hubris, no fall, only the hush of a world held in a single breath, exhaled into eternity. So lie still now. Feel the warmth of sun through ash, the silence that covers streets like a soft woolen cloak, the paintings that still bloom in color beneath the dust. And no, the city is not gone. It is waiting. Long ago, the earth stirred in its sleep. Beneath the soft waves of the Aegean, beneath the painted walls and spiraling paths, something ancient and immense began to awaken. At first it was a murmur, a low sound, like distant thunder muffled beneath stone. Then a shudder, a breath drawn deep beneath the crust of the world. The volcano at what we now call Santorini had slept for centuries, but sleep is never forever, and when it rose it did not whisper, it roared. Let us not imagine the destruction with fear. Let us imagine it as the Minoans might have felt it. A message from the divine, a moment when the very breath of the earth shifted. Before the eruption, There were signs, animals uneasy, water retreating from the shores, the sky darkening with unfamiliar clouds, and the ground itself groaning beneath bare feet. Those who lived in Akrotiri felt the warnings. They did not wait. They gathered what they could, perhaps spoke quiet farewells to the walls they had painted with dreams, and fled to other islands, to the arms of kin, to places we cannot name. And then the mountain opened, with a force beyond reckoning. It tore itself apart. Ash and fire filled the sky. Towers of smoke climbed into the heavens. Lightning danced in volcanic clouds like divine fury given form. A tsunami raced across the sea, silent and cold. Crete's northern coast may have felt the waves reach. Its ports open graceful were not made to resist. Its fields lush and fertile turned to ash, but again, we must not think only of ruin. This was transformation, the world the Minoans knew, and with it, their story changed. It is possible that this moment began the unraveling, the disruption of trade, the loss of harvest, the slow encroachment of Mycenaean ways, or perhaps it was simply the turning of the spiral. One age ending, another beginning. Thera's eruption was one of the greatest natural events in human memory, and yet what remains of it is silence. A city beneath ash, a people who vanished without war, a world remembered not in screams, but in murals. There is something profoundly Minoan in that, to respond to the fire not with conquest, but with color, to leave behind no epic, but a painted room, a dolphin in mid-leap, a young girl gathering sap, a priestess with eyes the color of dusk. Tonight, as you lie in stillness, imagine that moment when the sky turned red, when the stars vanished beneath a veil of ash, when the sea rose, then fell, and then stillness, the kind that lingers after transformation, the kind that waits for memory to rise again. The Minoans did not disappear in an instant. They became part of something larger, a story still unfolding, and you, dreamer, you are now part of that story too. Long after the Minoan voices fell silent, others came, from across the narrow seas, from the rugged hills of the Greek mainland. They arrived curious, ambitious, and armed with words carved for war. Where the Minoans built with openness, the Mycenaeans built with walls. Where Minoans painted swallows, lilies, and leaping bulls, the newcomers etched horses, spears, and soldiers. Yet still, something of the old dream lingered. The Mycenaeans did not destroy the Minoan world. They absorbed it, adopted it, wore its symbols like a borrowed garment. They entered the palaces. They kept the storerooms, the altars, even the spiral motifs. They used the Minoan script but changed it. Linear A became linear B, the language shifted. The rhythm changed, but the pulse remained. For a time, in this era of twilight, the palaces flickered with borrowed light, a mingling of old and new, like the last hues of sunset fading into the sea. But the harmony was gone. The priestesses were replaced with warriors, the dances with commands. The open courtyards, filled once with song and wind, now echoed with the heavy tread of armor. And then slowly, subtly, the world that had been the Minoans unraveled. The palaces burned, the rituals ceased, the symbols lost their meaning. The spiral became a question no longer asked. By the time Homer sang of Achilles and Odysseus, Crete was already legend, the old language unread, the goddess with serpents forgotten. But the stones, they remembered. They held the echo. And in later centuries, travelers would stumble upon ruins half-breed and overgrown, and wonder at the chambers, the frescoes, the strange, graceful designs. They gave names: Minos, labyrinth, minotaur, seeking meaning in myth. But beneath those names, the Minoans waited still. And now, dreamer, you wait with them. For the truth of their lives lies not in conquest, but in continuity, in the way a spiral draws inward, then out again, in the way the sea erases footprints, but not the path. So let your thoughts quiet, let the weight of centuries rest like gentle sand upon your chest, and feel the slow turning of the ages, like waves on stone. You do not need to understand the ancient tongue, you only need to listen. For the language of the Minoans was never just in words, it was in movement, in offering, in the quiet grace of those who lived without fear of forgetting, because they trusted the earth to remember. Stone remembers what people forget. It bears the pressure of centuries, the weight of wind and silence. It does not speak as we do, but it endures. And so, the ruins of Minoan Crete still whisper. They do not shout, they do not command attention. They rest, quiet, waiting a staircase to nowhere, its steps worn smooth. A sunken room whose purpose is unknown, but whose light falls just so each morning. A basin, cracked and dry, still holding the shape of water long vanished. Archaeologists have tried to decipher it all, with string and theory, with notebooks and carbon dates. They dig, they measure, they name. But stone does not always yield, because the Minoans did not build for explanation. They built for experience. Their architecture was intuitive, light wells to invite the sun, corridors that curve and flow, open spaces not for defense, but for gathering, dancing, worshipping. To walk through their ruins is not to enter a museum. It is to enter a memory, not of an event, but of a way of being. And yet, dreamer, you do not need to go to Crete to feel it. Close your eyes, breathe slowly. Imagine the floor beneath your bare feet cool, sun-warmed stone. The echo of your steps through a long corridor. The smell of oil lamps, of crushed herbs. The faint brush of wind moving through an upper window. You enter a room with painted walls. Dolphins leap in frozen arcs above your head. The room is silent, but the air is full. Not with sound, but with presence. This is how stone holds memory. Not in facts, not in time, but in feeling. The Minoans understood this. They built not to impress, but to dwell. Not to dominate, but to belong. Their palaces did not rise above the landscape. They emerged from it, as natural as a hill, as fluid as a stream. In the ruins, you find no monument to a ruler, no carved face, 10 feet tall, only stairways, columns, courtyards, light. It is as if they knew that memory does not need to shout, that beauty, made with care, would survive even fire and time. And so it has. Even now, their stones hold the quiet dignity of those who've created without need for glory. So as you sink deeper into rest, know that you, too, are held by the memory of those who came before, by the stones that endure in silence, by the dream of a world that valued harmony over history, the world of them. In the great sweep of history, we are taught to follow the to trace the rise of kingdoms, the fall of dynasties, the battles carved into stone, the victories proclaimed in monuments. But the Minoans, they do not follow this pattern. They did not seek to rule others. They did not cast their reach across distant lands. They left no chronicles of conquest, no parade of chained enemies, no towers to commemorate their triumphs. And yet for over 1,000 years, they built, they traded, they danced, they created, without a military empire, without walls around their hearts. They lived in beauty, not in dominance. And in this way, they are not a forgotten kingdom. They are a forgotten dream, a possibility that came true for a time, a civilization that chose fluidity over force, celebration over submission. They welcomed the foreign, absorbed the dissident, painted what they loved. They found joy in nature, meaning in movement, spirit in the everyday. And perhaps that is why they vanished so completely from history's gaze, because they did not fit the tale of empire. They could not be measured by conquest or control. Instead, they left behind a feeling, a whisper of another way to be human, to build not from fear, but from wonder, to worship not from guilt, but to express not with weapons, but with spirals, lilies, leaping bulls. They showed us that greatness is not always loud, that influence can be subtle, that beauty, sustained, can become its own kind of power. But they were not perfect. No, people are. They too had hierarchies. They too left some voices unheard. But what they offer us, what their dream still holds, is a question. What if civilization did not have to march? What if it could dance? What if legacy was not what you conquered, but what you created? Tonight, as you drift toward the depths of sleep, let that question remain with you. Not sharp, but soft, like the touch of sun on a stone wall, like the hush of waves against a harbor no longer there. The Minoans did not build an empire. They built a memory, and in doing so, they became the gentlest rebellion in history, a reminder that another way was once lived, and might, one day, be dreamed again. The dream of Atlantis lives deep in our cultural bones, a shining city swallowed by the sea, a people of wisdom and harmony undone by their own hubris, a warning and a wonder. Plato wrote of it, speaking not in certainty, but in memory shaped as myth, an island beyond the pillars of Heracles, with radiant temples, advanced knowledge, and a perfect order that crumbled from within. Many have searched for Atlantis in the Atlantic depths, beneath Antarctic ice, hidden in deserts or drowned by oceans. But always a story returns to the Aegean, to the Mediterranean, to Crete, and to Thera, to the Minoans. They fit the tale not with precision, but with poetry. An island people, advanced for their age, traders, artists, builders, dreamers, a society balanced not by domination, but by design. And then, not in an instant, not in a divine punishment, but in the quiet unraveling nature sometimes brings. Ash earthquakes, shifting currents, silence. Was Plato recalling echoes of the Minoans? Was Atlantis not a separate legend, but the afterimage of a civilization already lost? It is impossible to say, but what matters is not the answer. It is the yearning. Atlantis is not only a place, it is a longing for a world we feel must have existed, where people lived in peace with one another, with the land, with the mystery that breathes between all things. The Minoans, real and remembered, fulfill that longing more than any lost continent. They show us that such a world did exist, Not perfect, not eternal, but real. And perhaps that is why we still whisper of Atlantis. Because we remember, somewhere in our depths, that we were once capable of such beauty, and perhaps could be again. Tonight, let the image of Atlantis not be a warning, but a lullaby. Let its glowing towers become not a loss, but a promise that nothing truly beautiful is ever gone. It only drifts beneath the surface, waiting to rise. Let the sea of sleep carry you there, to the soft shores of myth, to the temples painted with lilies, to the people who danced in spirals beneath the stars. You will not find Atlantis, but you may remember something of it. Something ancient, something gentle, something already within you. And now, we return to where we began. To the island embraced by salt and sun, to the winding paths of Gnosis, where the breeze still moves as it once did, whispering past columns that stand without a voice, to frescoes half-faded but still dreaming in color, to jars that once held oil and honey, now holding only memory, to stairways that ascend toward nothing, and doorways that open only into the past. The Minoans are gone, and yet, they are not. Their disappearance was not the kind of vanishing that leaves absence. It left presence, a humming silence, a resonance. They live in the art that refused to fade, in the spirals carved by hands that never held a sword, in the goddess who still opens her arms, inviting us to remember. They do not ask to be understood, not with certainty, but with wonder, not with answers, but with stillness. So many civilizations have fallen loudly, their end marked by fire, invasion, and the cry of defeat. But the Minoans left like a breath, soft, lingering, unfolding into the myths of those who came later. And perhaps this, too, is a form of greatness, to vanish with grace, to let go without violence, to trust the sea to carry your story. When your voice is gone, you dreamer have walked their past tonight. You have followed the curve of the labyrinth, not to its center, but into its silence. You have felt the echo of painted dances, the stillness of buried rooms, the slow rhythm of a world that once was. And now, as sleep deepens, you carry part of them within you. You are a keeper of their memory, a listener of ancient whispers, a witness to a vanished world that asked for no monuments, but built beauty all the same. Let the Minoans remain with you in your dreams. Let their peace touch your breath. Let their spiral turn again in the quiet places of your soul. They are gone, but you have seen them, and that is enough. And now, dear dreamer, as the final embers of this night's journey glow softly within your thoughts, and the waves of sleep carry you farther from the waking shore, let the Minoans drift gently beside you, like dolphins beneath the surface, unseen, but always near. Theirs was a world that breathed with rhythm and reverence, a song not shouted but sung through silence, painted across walls, etched into vessels, woven into ritual. They did not leave behind conquests. They left behind calm. They did not rule others. They ruled beauty, quietly, lovingly. And though they vanished from history's scrolls, they remain in history's dreams. You have walked with them tonight, through halls open to the wind, through temples kissed by mountain light, through myths that shimmer like dew on olive leaves. Let your final breath of the evening be light. Let it spiral like their ancient symbols, inward, then outward, toward rest, toward peace. If this journey stirred something deep within, a softness, a longing, a distant remembering, then let your presence be felt with a gentle like, a whispered subscription to our circle of dreamers, and share, if you will, from which corner of this great sleeping earth you wandered here tonight. Let us connect in stillness, across time zones and oceans, across centuries and shadows. Together, we remember. Together, we dream. Until the next story unfolds. Rest well, wanderer of memory, and may the vanished Minoans guard your sleep as gently as they once guarded the sacred hush of their own. Good night.